Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Welcome back to the second session of the day on cybersecurity before and after 2020 trends and challenges. I am glad to introduce the speaker for the session, Mr. Mohesh Mohan, Senior Security Specialist, Smart Dubai. Mr. Mohesh started his career as a web application developer. He has worked as a part of IRTA doing penetration testing for external clients, including major banks, insurance, and telecom companies across Middle East and Africa. He has worked with global information security team and handled critical internal applications and periodic security assessments for all internet-facing applications. Currently, he is working as Senior Security Specialist for Dubai Smart Government. His areas of interest are robotics and hardware hacking. Currently, he is building a 3D printer, a CNC machine, and a robotic pet. His name and work has been mentioned in the famous book Hacking and Penetration Testing with Low Power Devices by Dr. Philip Polster, professor and renowned speaker at DEF CON 2014 USA. His recent achievement is a major authority on Indian government DigiLocker service and data responsible disposal of the same. Over to you, sir.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Am I audible? Is it fine? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're right.
Okay. Probably I'll start the presentation right now. Give me a second. Please let me know if you can see the screen. I hope it should be visible now. Hello? Is it visible now?
Yes, it's visible.
Yes, sir. It is.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So I'm going to talk about the state of cybersecurity before and after 2020. As you all know, the current situation that the whole world is facing with the whole pandemic situation. So I thought maybe like I'll give you an idea about how things were before this whole pandemic thing happened, and then how things immediately changed when the whole world went to a lockdown situation, and then what are the future things that we might see in the, especially focusing on the field of cybersecurity. Who am I? I'm basically a security specialist with almost like 10 years of experience. As mentioned in the introduction, like I was a developer, I turned as a security specialist, and currently I'm the senior security specialist for a government organization in the Middle East. And recently I uncovered a major flaw in DigiLocker app that is published by Indian government. And you can read about most of the stuff in my presentation here. Like later I can share the slides with you also. And what our opinions and the topics that I discuss here are solely my own, and these are based on public domain knowledge and doesn't represent anyone else. Also, I'm planning this session to be more like an interactive one. So at any point of time, if you have any queries, any doubts, like you want to ask something, like feel free to stop me, and you can ask that, because this is more like giving a higher level overview, and this kind of stuff usually kind of becomes boring when only one person talks. So yeah. And please let me know if you are having any issues hearing me or like viewing the presentation and all. Yeah. So, what are we going to talk about? As I mentioned, like we will talk about the state of cybersecurity before 2020 and how the lockdown affected the cybersecurity world, and what are the current trends and challenges that we see in the cybersecurity scenario, and what are the future of cybersecurity based on the trends that we see and predictions by different research firms. So most of the data that I'm going to present to you is based on research data accumulated by several research firms like Sophos, FireEye, and few other organizations that solely work on cybersecurity domain only. So before 2020, what was cybersecurity? So I'll give you an idea regarding to how this is related to organizations and how this is related to an individual as such. So for organizations, cybersecurity before 2020 was basically protecting certain assets that exist in their environment, and it's more like in a controlled scenario. Like everything was did had a clear definitive borderline, and the assets that you want to protect usually existed inside several controls or security measures that are in place. And you might have already heard about the whole cloud boom and everybody moving everything into cloud. Many organizations have heavy dependency on cloud infrastructure, cloud services, etc. So before 2020, the dependency on cloud-based solutions was more granular. Like everybody know what they wanted to achieve, and the plans to depend on any cloud application or use of any cloud service was like more on a very planned manner. Like everybody had clear plans on how to establish this, and the scenario when that is happening right now, work from home scenario, uh, that was more like a rarely scenario before 2020, because only few organizations actually allowed employees to have a long-term work from home scenario. Otherwise, it's more like on a need-to-need basis. Like some people will rarely make a request to do work from home from their own homes, and then this is very rare. And for individuals, it was more like work-related stuff usually happened in protected environments, like in their office scenario, their office networks, using office machines, like assets provided by the company, etc. And it was more like in a protected environment. And people rarely bothered about protecting their personal devices, home networks, and the family members rarely interacted with any work related matters as such. So what changed after the lockdown? So for organizations, basically workspace suddenly expanded to employees' homes. So that was one of the bigger change that suddenly happened, and it was more like people didn't get the enough time to plan it out and put forward new controls, etc. But everything happened in a very faster pace. People are forced to work from home. Then the whole workspace, office workspace, you have to shift everything to the employee's house itself. And then there is the sudden dependence on cloud solutions. As of now, like you can see, we are having a meeting on Google Meet, right? Which is a cloud-based solution. So many smaller organizations immediately had to take a decision. They had to surrender to basically these cloud giants, and they have to consume their services immediately. There was no other option. Like either you do it or you are out of the picture. And for major organizations, big cloud vendors immediately rolled out enterprise level solutions that will that can be immediately used by bigger organizations. So everybody suddenly started this heavy dependence on cloud solutions. That is one major change that happened during the lockdown. By the way, am I audible, or am I just talking as such? Like,
Yes, sir.
can you
Yes,
guys
sir.
hear me?
It's audible,
Okay,
audible.
okay. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to confirm because it's awfully silent and I was like, yeah. Okay. So, and as a result of these two things, what happened in the industry is like many organizations had to expose, or like I mentioned before, previously organizations have a clear, definitive border, and everything that they wanted to protect existed inside these borders. So you just have to do a proper border control to ensure that nobody gets inside. Now that border is becoming blurred, and you had to have expose a large set of sensitive things to be accessed remotely from the employee's home or like a remote location because of the whole work from home scenario. And for individuals, what happened is like everything happened in their houses, and the boundary between office and family become very blurred. And sometimes they have to improvise, like usually when you work in an organization, and let's say they provide you with a device to access their email or something like that, and one day if you find that your device is no longer working, you will be having a dedicated tech support team that will come and fetch the device, and then probably they will replace it or repair it for you. But in this whole work from scenario, with this whole social distancing, this is very hard to achieve for a standard organization. So people have to come up with improvisations, like they have to rely on their personal devices, or they sometimes they have to use their family devices, like devices that are shared between family members to do work and install their company applications and all these kind of things. So this greatly blurred the line between family related things and office related stuff. So companies will have to focus on or like they will have to come up with ideas to protect employees, their own personal devices. Though the concept of bring your own devices and everything was there even before the lockdown, many bigger organizations, they were really thinking about this, and they were building plans, and there were so many policies and organizational level policies and security policies and these kind of things were being built. But it was a very slow process, and nobody know when it was going to get finished. But with the whole lockdown scenario, everything had to happen right now. So many of the organizations, they have this whole half baked plan, and they have to roll it out without thinking much further. So all these opened up new areas where attackers find ways to exploit people. Yeah. And moving forward, so what does the whole thing mean for different people? Let's take about organizations. What this whole lockdown situation means is like, as I mentioned, like once you open up your secure closed borders, you are basically creating a larger attack surface where people can attack you. So you extend your company network to an employee's house. Basically, an attacker can now get into someone's house network and then hop from there to their company network. So the whole attack surface become very large, and this being a very disruptive change, the dependence on cloud solutions or introduction of your own personal devices to do work and all, this resulted in new loopholes being opened up. So if you find, attackers started finding different flaws here and there in this approach, and then they started exploiting it. And then there is another situation which is commonly termed as the vendor lock-in. When you go to any cloud computing terminologies, like vendor lock-in is basically a heavy dependence on one of the cloud service, which the company will have to live with. So they changing from one dependence on one particular cloud provider to another provider is sometimes not feasible when it comes to the work involved in that, and the cost associated with that. So you are basically stuck with using a specific cloud service, and you don't really have any other choice. So in that situation is basically called as a vendor lock-in situation. So suddenly changing all your workspace and depending upon these cloud giants and cloud solutions created this scenario where smaller organization, they suddenly shifted most of their data and their proprietary applications to cloud solutions, and they didn't really think about a plan B to switch or change it from one vendor to another vendor. If that is not worked out properly, you will stuck up, or you'll end up being inside a vendor lock-in situation where you are stuck with a particular vendor and you don't really have any choice. So this scenario also started happening across many of the bigger organizations when you look at this from an organizational perspective. Now, what happened with the society? With the whole uh, Corona or COVID lockdown situation, new and new sophisticated attacks started popping up, with companies exposing their uh, private networks or like their sensitive areas out into employees' houses. This started creating bigger problems. Like if you watch news lately, there have been a lot of different attacks that happened on bigger organizations with the whole COVID lockdown situation. So new and new sophisticated threats have started to pop up, and attackers or like the criminal minded people, they started coming up with COVID themed attacks that will create some sort of spams or like scams that are focused on corona based situation. I heard some noise, like is anyone trying to ask some question, like hello? No, okay. uh, yeah. With the whole situation, the society needs to have more awareness. That is one of the bigger problems that currently the world faces. Like, because there will be someone who is very proficient in IT. They started to do the whole work from home scenario, and his family members are probably not trained enough to identify different cyber threats out there. There is a huge risk that an organization itself working where this particular person is working might get compromised due to some mistake that is done by one of the family member itself. So this situation demanded more and more security awareness for the whole society. That is one outcome of this whole situation. Now, when you talk about governments and nations, what this whole thing means. So, as soon as this blurred of lines between office space and personal space started happening on a very large scale, state-sponsored attackers started attacking uh, different economies. That is a very, very reality as of now. There are these groups that are funded by different organizations sometimes, or even governments that target specific region of people or like specific group of people, and they started launching massive cyber attacks. So I will go through some of these in the coming slides. Like I'm planning to give you some current situations of what type of attacks that are being observed in the industry right now, and you get more statistical data about this. And all this situation started to be a big threat to our economy, because a bigger organization gets hit by a major cyber breach, cyber attack, and it will have a very bad impact on the economy as also. And not to talk about the national security
Excuse me, sir.
scenario also. Yes, sure.
Can you please increase your sound?
Okay. Is it audible now? Better?
Ah, yes, it's better.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So for the whole national security scenario, what I was trying to say is like there has been a lot of organizations that focus on specific attacking specific nations, or like they they run campaigns against different nations. Like, so these groups they started doing more and more sophisticated attacks when the whole lockdown situation started coming up. So we'll explore such some of these scenarios in the coming ones. So on the current trends of different cyber threats in this whole cybersecurity, what are the different commonly identified threats that we see currently as of now in 2020 as such? These are the ones that you see right now. So you see a lot of data breaches. So in the coming slides, I will give specific examples, and we'll talk more detailed about uh, each of these items in the coming slide. But data breaches are basically some organization or an entity, they inadvertently or sometimes being attacked by a specific group, actually leaks a lot of information about their clients, which could be very personal information, very sensitive financial information, etc. And this data might get exposed to, let's say, people started selling this kind of data in dark web for a specific amount of money and all. So there are a lot of there is a high rise in the number of data breaches that you observe, particularly in 2020 itself. And ransomware is the new type of trend that is followed by attackers. So I don't know if you already know about this. So ransomware is basically a kind of like a malware that infects on your IT assets, and they take all your data and encrypt all the data and make it unusable for you. And they will demand a ransom amount to be paid so that they will decrypt this data back for you. So it's like somebody coming to your cyberspace and kidnapping all your data and then demanding for ransom. So this is a very successful thing that started up, I think, a few years back, 2018, 2019 and all. It's become very prominent. Most of the time, it was more focused on individuals only, like some persons will be falling into some scam and probably installing a malware, or somebody attacking your personal devices and installing a malware which will be turned out be a ransomware itself. So your personal data might get encrypted, and then attacker will ask you for some money. So this is very common thing that happened in past years. But now the recent trend, what is happening is like these attackers are now focusing more on organizations rather than individuals. So you break into an organization's network, and then you infect all the IT assets with ransomware. So all your data, your very sensitive data, gets encrypted, and your services, your IT solutions become unusable. And then the attackers demand a huge amount of money. And most of the cases, like organizations didn't really plan for such a situation, and then they would have no choice but to pay for these attackers and then get their data back. So this is a very common threat that you see as of now. And another common situation that we see in the industry right now is basically exploiting zero-day vulnerabilities. So what is a zero day? A zero day is nothing but security flaw identified on a system which is not known before, and the day that you identify that issue is commonly termed as zero day, the zeroth day when you identified the situation. So based on the nature of this vulnerability, there might be a major, because let's say you have a particular uh, device that you use, or like a solution that you use for serving some of your application out in the public, and tomorrow some researcher or some attacker actually identifies a major flaw in that solution, so that it will be called as a zero day. And because this thing is right now in production, and people are actually using it, there could be a chance where somebody could use this information to get into your system, and then like get take control, or like take your data, or do some malicious thing. So this is becoming a very common thing. Previously it was more like some researchers doing this activity, and then they will be publishing it out to the public itself, like, okay, I have found this particular zero day in this particular software, and now as a responsible person, I have disclosed this to the particular cloud, or like the solution vendor itself. So this is the common thing that you used to observe in the past. Now what happened is like, there are dedicated hacker groups, or you call it as something like, in the coming slides I will explain it more, but there are these groups that are termed as advanced persistent threat, or APT groups. So what these groups do is like, they have a research wing on their own. They have enough resources to do this. They will be funded probably by an organization, or like different or governments itself, etc itself. And then they have this capability of identifying and creating these zero-day vulnerabilities, and then using them for their own advantages. That is becoming a very common thing these days. So one particular group will find a big major flaw in one of the application, and they might use it for their own personal gains. So that is becoming a very normal thing. We will talk more about in the coming slides. And next is, you guys already know about this whole mobile boom. Everybody now has one or two mobile devices with each individual itself. So mobile devices and the security threats associated with them is also a big thing that we see on the industry right now. So there will be specific campaigns or malware that are written or targeted on mobile devices itself to do some sort of malicious thing. That is also a very common thing right now. And then coming back to other scenarios like cloud jacking, crypto jacking, and form jacking. These are different mechanisms employed by attackers. Cloud jacking is basically, you find a flaw in one of the public cloud of one organization, and you use that flaw to get into the cloud, and then basically gaining access to the whole cloud environment itself. So basically you take over their cloud, and then you use it as your own personal tool for running a major scam, or like doing some other activity which is very malicious. So that is a very common thing that's observed these days. And then comes crypto jacking. This is another favorite attack done by attackers these days. So what it means is like, it's basically compromising an IT asset, and then using that IT asset to do some sort of cryptocurrency related activities. Let's say if it is used for mining some cryptocurrencies, using the CPU compute power and using it for mining cryptocurrencies. So that is also done by attackers these days. So they will just attack many systems, whatever systems that they can find, and then they install this coin mining software, which will do do coin mining for them. So coin mining, I hope you guys are already familiar about this term, like about cryptocurrency and other things already. So there are a lot of things that I am just skimming over. I mean, because of the limited time that we have, this is a very vast subject. There will be a lot of things to discuss. I'll try to give as much as possible. So if you have any queries in between, you feel free to stop me and ask that. So like I said, crypto mining scams or crypto jacking mechanisms, they infect machines and then basically install malware that will do coin mining for them. So what the attacker steals here is your computing power. So your CPU or your RAM or whatever computing power that you have on your IT assets is being used for the attacker for his own personal gains to mine cryptocurrency for him. That is one thing. Then comes form jacking, which is basically the attacker will attack some legitimate payment gateway sites, and then they inject some code in those sites. And when some customer uses this site to do some transaction with possibly their credit cards and all, these credit card information will be stolen by an attacker. So this is commonly named as form jacking mechanism. So this is also very prevalent in the industry these days. And phishing. Coming to the next topic, phishing is basically one of the very widely used social engineering technique that is used by attackers to do some sort of credential theft or doing a bigger scam. So we'll talk about phishing more in the coming slides. And then with the whole situation of COVID, there are scams that started which are related to COVID or maybe something even beyond that because of the whole lockdown thing. And like I mentioned before, organizations, borders are getting blurred and blurred. So many new scams are coming in. We will talk more about that in the coming slides also. And then comes the state-sponsored attacks, which we already touched base a little bit before, but this is also one current thing that you see as of now. And as per the study done by the link that you can see here, it's done by a university. An attack occurs every 39 seconds. So that is a more frequency of cyber attacks that are happening right now in the industry. Now we'll just go deep into some of these items, and then we'll discuss more about some challenges that are faced in the cybersecurity field. Also, we'll talk about the future of cybersecurity. Yeah, so getting into the details of these attacks that we discuss as of now, these are some statistics data that is published by different researcher firms or firms that focus more on security as well as security research related items. So based on the data that is published in 2020 itself, 49% of companies have experienced data breaches as of now. Some of the major events that happened in 2020, 2020 basically started with Microsoft accidentally exposing 250 million support logs. So this is basically a result of a minor misconfiguration done by Microsoft in their cloud platform, which accidentally exposed a large number of technical support logs. So if you look at that data that is getting exposed here, it may not be that important for a normal person, like, okay, this is just some support information, but this is very invaluable data for any scamming group that runs online support scams. So that is a very real thing that is happening. I don't know if you have noticed in the news and all, there are several arrests and several police raids that happened in India itself. There were many shady organizations working in particularly in North India region, where they used to run call centers that are used to scam people in different other foreign countries. So from the outside, they look like a normal IT firm or an IT support firm, but in reality, what they were doing is like they were running huge support scams targeted on, victims mostly from Europe or US and other countries. So this is very real thing. So this data that get exposed in this situation would have actually helped many of these online scamming groups. They might use this data, they might use the customer information that you find in this data and then target these customers to run their scams. That is one scenario. And then there is another situation that happened with one Thailand cell phone network company, AIS, which leaked 8 billion customer records. Again, this is also a result of a security misconfiguration from the company side itself, but some of the researchers actually identified it, and this is very sensitive personal data that gets leaked, so which could be used by attackers to do some scams or some sort of attacks that could be following. And now coming to the next one, the biggest one of the biggest hotel groups, Marriott, they suffered a major credential-based breach, which breached about 5.2 million records of their customers. Again, huge number. All this happened in 2020 itself. And again, coming to the next one, Life Labs is basically an organization that handles medical records of Canadian citizens. They have had a breach which almost exposed half of Canada. Like, so that many persons' records are exposed online. And if you go and do some statistical analysis on these data breaches, what we see is like half of the organizations, they spend only 6 to 15% of their their budget on data security. So they don't really bother about protecting this data, which is basically wrong with the whole lockdown situation and further exposure of these sensitive interfaces to the public. This is becoming a more and more challenging situation for organizations to protect their data. So they need to increase their budget and they need to invest more on data security. This is a clear indicator from this research. And one of the other interesting item that was observed is like organized crime groups are behind 50%, 55% of data breaches. So like I said, advanced persistent threats or APT groups are a very real thing these days. There are dedicated organizations or crime groups that run cyber attacks and all. So they are definitely behind 55% of these data breaches that you see. And another statistics says that 22% of all the breaches involve phishing mechanism. 37% involve an actual hack that happened. And 17% happened just because somebody installed some software which turned out to be malware. So this is just some interesting statistics that you observe in these data breaches. And one of the major observation from this whole statistical study is like 60% of the breaches in situations where that 37% that involves credential theft, it took more than 1 month to identify that there is an actual breach that happened, and then the organization took that much of time to react to these data breaches, which is a very long time when you consider the importance of this data that is getting leaked online. So that is also a very disturbing factor, and companies really need to invest on their detection mechanisms, and they need to focus more on these areas. In the introduction slides, there was mentioning about myself. I discovered one of the flaws with the major mobile application or called DigiLocker. This is This is actually published by Indian government. So what happened in that situation was, DigiLocker is basically used by citizens all over India to store their personal information, like their documents that are related to government related documents, like sometimes identity documents, sometimes it will be some transaction documents, sometimes it will be educational documents, medical records, etc. So this is a platform provided by the Indian government. So the whole thing happened as a result of one of very casual discussions that we had in one of our WhatsApp groups, and we just thought, okay, we'll just look into DigiLocker and see how the whole application behaves. And this is how it all started. And I found that the solution actually used an authentication mechanism with the two factors. One is a PIN that you have to enter, and then second is an SMS OTP that you need to enter to gain access to your documents. And to my surprise, this application had a serious authorization flow issue, which resulted in bypassing both these mechanisms and gaining access to anyone's account. So basically, 3 billion documents were stored in DigiLocker during the time when I found this flow. So theoretically speaking, I get exposed to these 3 billion documents as per my wish. If I wanted to access, I could have accessed that. And what I did was, like, I responsibly disclosed this vulnerability to the DigiLocker team with the help of Computer Emergency Response Team in India, which is called CERTIN. So we have a Computer Emergency Response Team, which basically handles these kind of incidents, and they coordinate all the activities related to fixing this and all. So after reporting this, the team was very enthusiastic, and they fixed these issues. So that's what happened with DigiLocker data breach situation. And now the next major thing that we saw in the previous slide is ransomware. So this is basically another set of statistical data that you observe based on the latest trends in 2020. And you can see that enterprise ransomware attacks are up by 12%, while overall number of attacks are down by 20%. Like I mentioned before, these cyber attacks are now focused more on organizations rather than individuals. That's why you can see the number of attacks become reduced, but the number of attacks that are against organizations started to rise. So it is projected that it will create a loss of $20 billion by 2021. So that is the amount of money that organizations or governments or individuals might lose by 2021. And some of the major events that happened was Execufam. They had their data stolen and published in a ransomware. So what attackers do here is, like, they infect your IT assets with these malwares that will encrypt your data, and sometimes they will steal this data. They will export this data outside and keep it on their own. And if the ransom amount is not paid, they will threaten to release it out in the dark web or public web in some cases. So this is one such situation where this is a pharmacy company, and their sensitive financial information, research information, these got exposed outside because of they didn't pay a ransom for this. Another is a travel company. They had presence in 30 countries, and their website was attacked, and attackers are demanding $6 million to revoke access. And if you look at most of the major organization breaches, there is a group known as R-Evil or Revil, whatever you can pronounce. So this group is behind major organizational attacks that happen. So the next one, Alexon, is basically an organization that do reconciliation for electricity related things, transaction information and all in the UK. They were exploited on their VPN solution, and then this Reveal group, they did the attack. They infected these machines with ransomware, and their data was held. And interestingly, most of the studies that point that India is one of the topmost countries that got attacked when it comes to organizations. We having 82% of our organizations hit with ransomware attacks in 2020 itself. And another statistics is basically 26% of organizations they paid their ransom to retrieve this data. So they actually paid money to retrieve the data. Where in 56% of cases, these companies didn't bother about this. They just destroyed those IT assets and then, restored their backups and they got their data back. Sorry. And 12% of these companies retrieve data by other means. This could be like finding or reversing the way they encrypted the data and then decrypting it. That is one other way. Or sometimes there will be dedicated research that will be focused on specific ransomware, so that these research groups will find keys to decrypt data, and using these keys you can actually retrieve your data back. Yeah. So moving on, I hope I'm not taking much time, right? How much time is there left? Can someone update that?
Up to 3 o'clock, sir. 3 o'clock.
Uh,
10 more minutes, yes, 10 more minutes.
10 more. Okay. So I'll try to quickly wrap this out. Yeah. And coming to the next item, this is zero day and their exploits. Like I mentioned before, there were so many flaws that are identified on systems that are right now used by organizations or the public, and then these flaws will be utilized immediately by some malicious attackers to gain some access. So similarly, this the one that you see on the slide right now, CV 2019-19781. So CV is basically a common vulnerability and exposures database, wherein it's an organization, it's a non-profit organization. They keep track of all the major vulnerabilities that are identified across different solutions, software, etc. And CVID is basically a unique ID given to any vulnerability that they identify. So Citrix is a vendor that is used by many large organizations to set up their infrastructure. So Citrix provides services like virtual private networks, VPN services, load balancer services, application delivery controllers, etc. So during by the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020, there was a major vulnerability that was identified on Citrix that could be exploited by an unauthenticated attacker from outside to gain full access to this platform and then take over the network. So Citrix is basically the gateway to most of the organization's internal network. So finding a major flaw in the gateway means gaining access to the whole internal network itself. So immediately after this research was published online, different attackers started reversing, or like they tried to decipher what was this flow, and then they finally started building malware that was able to exploit this flow. So as mentioned earlier about R-Evil or Revil or whatever that is, these groups immediately deployed a ransomware that was able to attack Citrix-based installations and then get into their network and then deploy complicated or complex malware inside organization networks. So this started happening in the beginning of 2020. In December, the number of vulnerable systems out there in the internet was close to 80,000. And by mid-January, many of these people actually fixed the issue, and still there were 25,000 systems that were exposed outside in the internet. And by February, it was down to 11,000 systems. So still there will be some systems that will be exposed with this vulnerability. So people are actively creating malware based on recent flaws that are identified and then attacking, specific organizations. It's a very normal thing that's happening these days. And Dark Hotel APT group is basically an advanced persistent threat group that focuses more on hotel, uh, you know, consortiums and hotel groups and all. They focus attack on these groups, but they suddenly started attacking a Chinese VPN provider called Sang4, which is used by Chinese government agencies. And then at least 200 VPN servers were compromised in first week of April. So this is observed by one of the research firms. They monitor these kind of activities and they publish this information. And in June 2020, Apple confirmed that 900 million iPhones are vulnerable to iOS app mail flow. And suddenly there is a research firm that they discovered that this was even exploited dating back to 2010 itself. So there are so many exploits that happened on this particular flow even 10 years before it was actually discovered by or confirmed by Apple. And Dark Trace Cyber AI is basically an organization that uses artificial intelligence to monitor different type of attacks and then respond or like analyze these attacks. So they picked up a group of attacks on Manage Engine. So Manage Engine is basically a software that is used by many organizations to monitor their IT assets, so that if the assets are performing well, if there is any performance issues and these kind of things, and several other things Manage Engine is used. So this AI system, they picked up that there is an APT group called APT41. They are based out of they are speculated to be based out of China. They actually attributed these attacks. They started attacking Manage Engine with a zero-day vulnerability. And Google, they actually patched one of their Chrome-based zero-day. So a Chrome-based zero-day is more severe because Chrome is mostly the most used browser these days. 80% of the whole world uses Chrome. So finding a zero-day attack on Chrome means basically anybody who is using Chrome can be attacked. So that's a very serious thing. So Google, they identified that there are some groups that actually exploit their browser with this particular vulnerability, and they immediately patched it. So you can see that Chrome updates are very frequent because Google have a very good security team that does all these activities. Now, because of the limitation of time, I'll try to run this very quickly. But now coming to the topic of mobile security, you can see there is a huge number of rise in malicious mobile applications that are published in 2020 itself. So you can see a large number of these malicious applications are identified by Kaspersky team. They have published their information, and these are the major ones that they observe in different mobile platforms. Like you can see, there is a life access shopper malware that basically abuses single sign-on mechanism, and they abuse this functionality, and they create fake reviews and fake clicking scams for specific products that or websites or content that they want to push in different social media. So basically your account could be used by this malware to create a review in Google or Facebook or whatever social media the malware connects to, and then you will be posting a review based on your account itself. So the malware does all this hidden from you. And then there are hidden ads malware. They basically infect your phone, and then they start pushing these ads in the phone, so that you don't have really any other choice but to see these ads, and somebody will be making money because you are watching these ads that are forcefully pushed into your device. So this is one thing. And then there is a new type of malware called event bot, which is a variant malware that is basically focused on stealing financial information from different other applications that are installed on your mobile. Let's say you have PayPal installed in your on your mobile device, and this malware gets infected, it will try to take over your financial information from PayPal and send it to some other malicious attacker. Yeah, so and also mobile apps are widely now speculated that these are mobile applications or mobile platforms are used for state-sponsored surveillance. As you already know that India already banned 59 Chinese apps, and are already considering 250 another apps because they seem to be causing a major threat to national security. So this is a very real thing that is happening, and the data that is collected by large organizations like Facebook, Google, Apple, etc., are posing a big threat to an end user privacy. So let's look at what is meant by that. I'll just quickly go through a scenario that is done by Facebook itself. So I don't know if you guys know that Facebook is actually a social media platform, but they have this analytical engine or analytical SDK that is provided for different organizations, so that they can use this analytical data to push ads into the social media platform, that is Facebook, so that you can target a specific group of people and push ads to them. To achieve this, they have providing this FB integration SDK to developers, so that they can integrate this analytical data to their applications, and then Facebook will correlate all this data, and then provide you with valid targets where you can push ads into. So Facebook also owns several major names in social media like WhatsApp, Instagram, and obviously Facebook itself, and they correlate everything. So basically what happens is like, if you are using another application that is integrated with a Facebook SDK, it is still sharing data to Facebook itself. So imagine you have WhatsApp or Facebook installed on your phone, and you have one of the game that you installed on your phone, which shares information to Facebook itself. So this game, or let's say, let's take an example of a shopping app like Flipkart or something. I'm not sure if Flipkart is integrated with Facebook, but hypothetically speaking, let's say Flipkart is integrated with Facebook. So the moment you open Flipkart app, a Flipkart app will send information to Facebook saying that this person is searching for this particular item, this person is doing this activity in Flipkart app, etc. Now you have WhatsApp installed on the same phone itself. So WhatsApp also will tell Facebook that this is the person who is using WhatsApp, and this particular phone he has WhatsApp installed. So Facebook will get all this data and correlate all this data. So what eventually will happen is like, this person, they will create a profile of you. So they will correlate this data and create a profile of you. So they will say that, okay, this person has Flipkart installed, and he's searching for so and so item in Flipkart. Now they will sell this data to different people who wants to push ads to you. So there's a massive correlation of data that is coming to them. So it is not just by using Facebook itself, all other apps that are integrated with Facebook also sends data to you. So you can see all your information of Facebook activity information in this domain that you see on the screen right now, facebook.com/off_Facebook_activity. So there, if you go there, you'll be amazed at how other people are sharing information about you to Facebook. And this company is not known for using this data in a responsible manner. You can see in May 2020 itself, Canada fined $6 million over Facebook for they making false allegations that they are actually protecting the data, but they were actually exposing all your data to some third party developer. So this is one such example, and if you look at others like Google, Apple, it is much more severe than this. Now, the other one that I talked about is cloud jacking, crypto jacking, and form jacking. Like I said, cloud jacking is basically gaining access to all your cloud resources by finding a flaw in your cloud. Then crypto jacking is basically hijacking your compute resources to run crypto mining scams. And form jacking, you can see in the picture itself, like you actually pay something on a legitimate site where attacker already injected some piece of code. That piece of code will send your credit card data to the attacker itself. So you will not know this. You will actually pay to the actual shop itself. You will get your whatever you order in the shop, online shop. But in the same time, attacker will also get a copy of your credit card information. So he will start using it for his own purpose. So this is what is called form jacking. Now it comes to the most widely used item, which is basically phishing. So we can see here a chain is no stronger than its weakest link. So humans are the most weakest link in when it comes to cybersecurity. So phishing is basically tricking. It's a form of social engineering attack used by attackers. So they will trick someone to do some activity, and with this, they will probably steal your authentication credentials and use it for malicious purposes. So one of the common phishing attacks that you see is like somebody will be creating a fake domain or a page that looks like Facebook or Google, and send you a link and asking that, okay, I found this interesting thing, click on this link to see what that is. So when you click on that link, you'll be seeing what looks like a Facebook login or a Google login page, and you, without checking anything, if you log in there, your credentials will be sent back to the attacker. So they will get your username, your password, etc. This is a very common phishing attack that happened. As an individual, that is a very common phishing attack that happens very frequently. But on an organizational level, also this is happening. Like, let's say if you want to attack an organization, what you do, like uh, you can actually target one of the employees that works in that organization. You can create a social engineering attack on him and then gain access to these credentials, and then finally gaining access to the organization itself. So you can see that 22% of all the breaches that we talked about in the earlier slides involve phishing, and 37% of all untrained users actually fail for this phishing. So they all actually fall as a victim of this attack. And 90% of verified phishing scams were discovered in secure email gateways. So email is one of the more common ways that attackers used to do phishing attacks. So basically, they send a email saying that, okay, you click on this to do some activity, and then basically it's a phishing attack. So by creating a targeted phishing attack, most of the automated security controls that are enforced in secure email gateways can be bypassed. So that is very evident from the study that is conducted. So 90% of such attacks actually end up in email boxes itself. And 88% of organizations reported experiencing spear phishing attacks. Spear phishing attack, like I mentioned before, is a targeted attack on specific organization or an individual. So that is called a spear phishing attack. So 88% of organizations actually reported this happening in 2019 itself. And 74% of all phishing websites now use HTTPS. Previously, not using HTTPS was one of the immediate giveaways that this is a phishing attack. Now attackers also started using HTTPS protocol for their websites, so that different detection mechanisms for them, it will be more complicated to detect these, or it will look more legitimate to the end user. So several things they are achieving with using HTTPS. And you can see, like, first week of April, Google blocked more than 18 million COVID-related phishing emails, and 51,000 COVID-themed domains have been registered between January 2020 and March 2020. So you can see that's a huge rise now, and 94% of corona related cyber attacks were phishing attacks basically. And like most of the cyber attacks that happened elsewhere, China is behind most of the attacks that is happening all over the world right now. Now, when it comes to scams, there are different scams run by attackers to perpetrate something. Like, for example, in July 17, like few days back, there was a major breach in Twitter wherein 130 high-profile Twitter accounts were hijacked, and they were sending bogus tweets about, sending cryptocurrencies and doubling your money and all. So people who fell victim for this attack are Barack Obama, Elon Musk, Kanye West, Bill Gates, Apple, Uber, etc. So you can see that it's a very serious thing that happened few days back, and Twitter had to publicly apologize for this. So what happened during this attack was like because Twitter had the whole lockdown scenario, people started working from home, and it is widely speculated that one of the Twitter employee was social engineered with possibly a phishing attack, and then his credentials were stolen, and then because of the work from home scenario, some of the sensitive tools that is used inside Twitter is exposed, and attacker got access to that, and then he took over these 130 high profile accounts. So this is the conclusion based on the latest evidences that are gathered from different dark web and other things. So this is the most widely speculation that's happening right now, and it is still being investigated by FBI and where the various other organizations also. Now we are also seeing a large number of rise in COVID themed attacks, because people mostly started to lose their jobs, or people are desperate to have money. So there are a lot of scams that are focused or themed based on Corona. And few days back, one of the group that I was part of, which is called YAS, yet another security group, therein we organize a session with Kerala police, and we organize a session that is focused only on these scams. So it's a huge topic. Like explaining all these things will take more and more time since we are really out of time right now. I would share these slides so you can have a look on these videos that I posted in the slide here. And my friend Venkatesh Shivakumar, he actually did some correlation and due diligence and found that most of these crypto scams are focused on India right now, and these are run by domains or people that operate out of China. So you can find in his blog all the evidences that he's collected, and it's right now he has already reported this to certain, and it's being investigated upon. Yeah. Now, when it comes to state-sponsored attack, I'll just quickly skim through it. Like I said, advanced persistent threat is a kind of group. They are usually the ones behind state-sponsored attack. And Google's threat analysis group TAG, they issued 40,000 warnings in 2020 itself against individuals that they fall against state-sponsored attacks. So some organization or evil group or crime syndicate or whatever it is, they are targeting specific individuals, and with more resource and more sophisticated mechanisms, they are attacking people. And Australian Prime Minister, they publicly acknowledged that country is facing a cyber attack, possibly from China itself. And you can see a huge list of APT groups that the research firm FireEye created a curated list of that. You can read most of these attack groups and their affiliations and which country or which organization they are affiliated with, and the methods and the non-mechanisms that they use are all listed in this page. So state-sponsored attacks are also a very real thing these days, and Now coming to the end of our presentation, like what are the current challenges that we face in our cybersecurity scenario as of now? You can see like 25% of firms or organizations report that security awareness is a major thing, and 24% they say that not having enough skilled personnel is a big thing, and 23% they say inadequate funding is a problem, and 23% they say there is too much data to analyze, we don't have enough people, this is another problem, and lack of management support awareness is another problem that we face. And now if you look at the skill gap that is mentioned in the previous one, this data is based on 2018-2019 studies, so you can see different regions and the number of people required in cybersecurity domain in these from these locations. So there is a huge understaffing or shortage of people in IT security, and different organizations are currently relying on many automated mechanisms to somehow deal with this gap. Okay, so now we talked about all these things and what is going to happen, or like what are the actions done by different organizations, or like what is the current trend that is happening to actually address these things that we see. So one of the things that you see, like data breaches, phishing attacks, malware stealing your credentials, it's all based on one common thing, which is basically a username and password, right? So most of the organizations, they are considering password as a dead technology. They are moving into multi-factor authentication mechanisms, digital identities, hardware-based tokens. Like when you want to log into your some service, you have to use a USB key which has a secure token inside that. So once you plug that in, only you can log into that. So that is a very real thing that is out there in the market these days. You can buy that, and is almost instantly supported by most of the operating systems, modern operating systems, and some applications are also supporting this. And then different countries like UAE, Estonia, Sweden, etc., they are coming up with this concept of digital identity. So it's more like an online identity solution that can be used by an individual to authenticate or to prove your authentication against online services and all. So in certain situations, like let's say you want to log into a government service, and your digital identity probably be existing inside your mobile device itself. So yeah, you use your mobile phone to authenticate against the government service that is exposed on it. So this is a very normal thing that's happening. And to be frank, like I am also involved in one of the projects that is happening here in UAE. So yeah. Yeah, so this is a very normal thing that's happening now. When it comes to usage of artificial intelligence to help with this situation, so more and more firms are coming up with more and more automation mechanisms to do active monitoring of these attacks using artificial intelligence to find out what is happening. So as I mentioned in one of the previous slides, Dark Trace is one of the such organization here use an AI-based system to triangulate attacks and then deduce what is happening in the attack and all. So SOAR systems are basically incident response systems that can automatically do an action based on some security incident that is happening in your organization. So this is also widely used by all the organizations these days, and more technology enhancements are happening in this field right now. And when it comes to the development, we are in the age where companies actually develop code like just like anything. Like if you look at something like Netflix and all, they have like thousands of deployments in a single day itself. So to ensure that security is followed on all these development activities, like there is a concept of DevSecOps. Again, a big topic that we need to discuss, but that is a orchestration of all development deployment activities with proper security controls embedded in each phase. So that is also being practiced by most of the major organizations that we have. Now, for in the future, what is going to happen based on all the statistical analysis? It is widely speculated that all the large enterprises will have a CISO or Chief Information Security Officer position open by 2021, and the global cybersecurity market is projected to grow by 260 billion, and uh, organizations are going to spend a lot of money to provide security awareness to their employees, and more automation is going to happen in this scenario. Now, coming to the future cyber security trends or threats that you might face, clearly AI is used by both attacker and defending team also. So AI is basically a double-edged sword. So attackers can also use AI to launch sophisticated attacks. We are seeing more evidence on that front also, especially with all these APT groups doing very large-scale research and doing more and more things. So this is a very clear and present thing that is going to happen. And there is something called deep fakes. So I thought I'll end my presentation by showing a video of one of the deep fake. So deepfake is basically using machine learning and artificial intelligence to create and manipulate an existing image or a video of a person to create or say something that which didn't actually happen. So let's say somebody takes a photograph of some person or just a video of a person and uses that video to train an artificial intelligence to create a fake video of that person with all audio and video, everything matches to that person. It will be very hard for a normal person to identify that this is a fake video created by an artificial intelligence. So this is very real. There are already research papers and already code available currently online to do this activity, and we are expecting that in the coming years, using this attackers or spammers or scammers are going to create more havoc in the society. So that is one thing. And then machine learning poisoning, again, systems are getting more automated these days. Autonomous systems with machine learning capabilities are rolled out by different entities. So poisoning these systems and doing some sort of malicious thing with automated learning systems is also a very real threat that is going to be existing in the very near future. And obviously, like I said, automation will definitely play a key role in all this. Now, I will try to end my presentation with playing one of the deep fake video that you can find online. I hope you can see my screen, right? And I think I already exceeded the time by 30 minutes. So is that fine if I can play this? Uh,
Yes, sir, it's okay.
yeah, okay. So this is one of the deepfake video that is created with Obama's face. Actually, I think you cannot hear this audio that he's saying, but again, the audio is also created by an artificial intelligence system. So this will look very real, but it is not actually a real video done by Obama. This is a video stream that is created by an artificial intelligence machine learning system that learned Obama's expressions and face and everything, and then created everything on their own. So, yeah. So the system will use the person's face that you see on the right side to create a fake video that happens on the left side. So if you just Google it out in YouTube and all, you can find a lot of videos like this. For example, this is another one that is done by Donald Trump, which is actually based on another video that is out there in some, I think, it is some TV show. So they replace the person's face with Trump's face in the video show. So this is also very normal thing, and all the code and research to do this activity is actually available in the public domain these days. So you can see this is actually a completely different person. His face will transform like Obama during the course of this video. Uh, I mean, it's a pretty long video, so I'm not going to show that completely. But this is how it will turn out to be, like for deep fakes. And yeah, so that's it. I'm sorry for taking a bit more time, but it's a big topic and it will take a lot of time to explain everything.
Okay, sir. So, as we reach the end of the session, if any participants have any doubts regarding the topic, please use the chat box and write it down. I have already one query, sir, in the chat box. It's regarding some message from the SBI bank,
Yeah.
and he said he lost around 6,000 rupees. So, the participant needs to know about that message. SBI bank. It's a strange
Yeah.
message, I think.
So this appears to be some sort of an online payment that happened. Google CHRS transaction. So it appears like maybe something that is integrated with the Google Pay. There might be some scam or something that is integrated with the Google Pay, and they might have detected this amount. This will require more investigation. With this message, it's very hard to detect what happened actually. Yeah. Have you tried
Okay,
approaching
sir. So,
any
we have another query.
any? Sorry.
No, sir, continue,
Hello.
continue.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to
Just
do this, like, you can approach an like a police or someone, or a digital like cyber or defense, or whatever. Like these days, it's called Cyber Dome. I think from Kerala Police, at least. I don't know about other states, but these guys can at least try to help you guys. Like, this needs more investigation. Just by this message, it's hard to deduce what actually happened. Yeah. Is
Okay,
there
sir, we have
any?
another doubt from Veena Suresh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is
Is
there
there
any
any mechanism?
mechanism to identify whether our
Oh, okay. Yeah.
is affected, jacking, especially crypto?
Yeah, so most of this cryptojacking malware is actually identified by most of the major antivirus companies. So, especially when you look at it from an organization perspective, the antivirus used for organizations are much more capable than what is available for personal use. The antivirus used by organizations usually get machine learning capabilities, or enhanced detection and reaction capabilities like EDR systems. So they have a set of rules that are used to deduce that, okay, suddenly running of this particular application is causing too much CPU resources to be used, which could be malicious. So, and there are several signatures for most of the crypto mining malware out there. So using antivirus or EDR systems in organizations is a good way to detect these kind of efforts or attacks. Yeah.
Any more doubts? Any more queries? So I hope no participants are there with any more queries. So,
Okay.
as part of winding up the session, on behalf of the whole department, the participants, I thank you, sir, for a wonderful session on cybersecurity. Thank you, sir, for such an informative session. And thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you guys for organizing this and giving me an opportunity. Sorry for taking more time, but yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, before leaving the site, all the participants, please use the link provided in the chat box. Mark your attendance and the feedback. So, let's meet tomorrow using the same link for another session. Thank you.
Thank you.